you to the second IE KMD Venture Day Tokyo. We're going to start off with three speakers. First two speakers, we'll have Joel McConnell and Julie Sanchez from IE give a short presentation. Thanks.
Well, welcome everybody. Julie and I are on tour right now. It's our last activity for 2014 here in the region. So we wanted to give you first a welcome and tell you a little bit about IE as an institution and what we're doing with regards to alumni relations. I'm the Regional Director for Asia Pacific at IE Business School, and I am part of the International Development Department at IE. International Development at IE is principally about institutional relations, alumni relations, and of course supporting candidates that want to come study with us at either our Madrid or our Segovia campus. Venture Days are very important for us at IE, and especially with regards to international development. This is our fourth and final Venture Day in Asia Pacific this year, having completed previous dates in Shanghai, Manila, as well as Seoul at the World Knowledge Forum, and today here at Keio University. So thank you for joining us. I hope that if you have any questions about IE Business School and in our programs, you won't be shy to approach me later. And of course, I would like to welcome our alumni and introduce you to Julia Sanchez, who is our Global Head of Alumni Relations.
Thank you, Joel. Well, as Joel mentioned, my name is Julia Sanchez. I am the head of Global Alumni Relations at IE Business School. We're very proud of our alumni network. We have a very broad scope, 50,000 worldwide, located across 110 countries. And I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. It's especially a privilege because it's my first time in Tokyo. So thank you for welcoming both me and IE to your wonderful city. I often get asked about what makes our alumni community so special. So I wanted to share a couple points with you today, and I think that this type of event, our Venture Days worldwide, are a perfect example of why we're such a unique school. So what we strive as an alumni community is to inspire one another, to think big and put our ideas into action. We empower one another. We strive to support one another and always push the boundaries of our comfort zone and always welcome change. And third, we strive to co-create, to share knowledge, to create opportunities to positively impact not only our communities but the world at large. And so today I'm very excited to learn the ideas that you're going to present here today, and most importantly to watch them grow and to see how IE can be involved in bringing those ideas to fruition. So a special welcome to our alumni community that are here today, and a special thank you to all of you for welcoming us. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be the Dean of KMD, the graduate school here. So I'd like to welcome Masa.
Welcome to Keio University. I'm the Dean of Graduate School of Media Design. We have several campuses at Keio. My campus is not here, but this is a headquarters of Keio. As you know, Keio University founder Fukuzawa-san is a visionary in Japan that appears on our 10,000 yen bill or $100 bill in Japanese yen. So he's a figure who's always looking forward into the future and always looking to how to create new types of leaders for the upcoming society. At Keio Graduate School of Media Design, also known from KMD, we are committed to create the next generation creative leaders and also who can work beyond boundaries. Beyond boundaries we define is not only about the country, the regional boundary that goes beyond, which we call global in many ways, but also different disciplines needs to be cross-border or to do collaboration. So at KMD, we have lots of partnerships around business school consortium called SEMS. We also have a partnership with design schools called Global Innovation Design Program. And now we are starting this interesting journey about acceleration program for creating more creative types of entrepreneurs. In Japan, we need more and more entrepreneurs and entrepreneur spirit people who might not do entrepreneurship, but still have the spirit of exploring, adventurous with curiosity. We need explorers. So at KMD, we are very, very honored to participate on this Venture Day with IE Business School. I hope you'll be inspired by all these finalist presentations. This morning we had student presentations run by Professor Paris de Tetras from IE Business School. We've invited him for several years now to run an acceleration program for 2 weeks. And the result was presented by students this morning, and we've selected the 2 of the best, which will be included in the 10 presentations. So if you have any interest in going global, trying to go beyond comfort zone, as they mentioned, I think it is important to think outside the box. It's not just think, but also act outside the box. If you have interest in partnering with us, we welcome you on board on IE KMD Venture Day and the future events. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Masa. So our first keynote speech will be given by Matt Romain. He's a co-founder of Gengo. They've done very well. I've seen them grow over the last few years, and it's a real pleasure to invite them here today. Matt, all yours.
Great. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. If anyone had told me 5, 6 years ago when we started Gengo that I would be giving a keynote at a pitch event like this, I would have been like, what? Like, no way. Like, I just couldn't have imagined that. And so I'm Matthew Romain, Gengo co-founder and CTO. You can follow me on Twitter. We also have a company Gengo account. So just want to kind of get a sense of the audience. How many of you are doing your own startup? Can you raise your hands? Cool. How many of you want to be doing one but are not yet? Okay, there's a couple. Cool. All right. So when we started, I think you could count on one finger how many incubators there were 5, 6 years ago. And now I feel like there's more than 20. And so there's been a lot of interesting growth over the past 5, 6 years in the entrepreneur ecosystem. And there's also been a lot of events, such as this one. I was also at another one on Tuesday. And there's a lot of events on the weekend and on evenings as well. And I think what's interesting is that when we started, there was much less access to entrepreneurs and others who either had experience or who were like-minded. But now with events like these, you get together and share some thoughts and learnings. So it's just really great. I'm just very excited about the direction that things are going for the startup community. What's also really cool, if you're just getting started, is that you get to learn from other people's mistakes. And others who've raised a lot of money and spent and lost a lot of money from other people's money. And so at least it doesn't have to be your case, but you get to learn from it. So it's very exciting. And I think what's particularly interesting is that there's a lot of growth that's happening outside of the Bay Area. And in particular, the fact that, for example, FailCon was hosted earlier this year says a lot, is a big testament to how far things have come within Japan. And I'm also starting to notice a lot of entrepreneurs interested, who are from the Bay Area, interested in Japan and coming out this way. And so and also exploring other parts of Asia as well. And so it's very encouraging. And so since we're quite an international audience, it seems, today, and I think some of us aspire to build some global platforms and businesses, I thought I'd share a little bit about how at Gengo we've approached it. But before I get started, maybe some of you guys have heard or seen this before. Just one caveat, of course, anything that may come across as advice that I share today, it's from my limited experience, and it's probably quite oversimplified. So I won't be offended if you take anything I say with a big grain of salt. So people also say that when you start a company, the culture of a company is often a reflection of the founding team. And so I think it'll make sense to share a little bit about myself, just to kind of give you some context to Gengo growing. So I was born in Boston to a Japanese mother and an American father. Sometimes I get mistaken for an Italian, but I'm half Japanese, half American. We, as a family, we sort of flew back and forth around from the East Coast, Boston to Tokyo, lived in London for a little bit, eventually grew up here, and then went back to the East Coast to go to university. And I couldn't decide between a couple different topics, and so I ended up studying both computer science and music theory, and went on to graduate school, and then found an opportunity at Sony here in Japan, where I did a lot of audio research. And I was hired as a seishain, which is sort of a full-time employee. And when you're a seishain in a Japanese company, some of you may know, they send you through a couple different experiences, and as sort of training that's outside of what you're hired for. And one of the things that I had to do was hanbai kenshu, which is sales training. So I had to work for a month in Akihabara at the Laux there on the duty-free floor, selling digital cameras and video cameras. So here's a guy with a master's in music selling product in Akihabara. This was a very interesting and eye-opening experience for me. I did manage to sell, I think it was over $100,000 in product. So I was pretty excited about that. After this experience, I went back to Sony and was doing a lot of research. And eventually, Howard Stringer became the CEO. And so I was asked to sort of get closer to headquarters, and found myself doing a lot of translation work. So I started to think, like, really, I was hired as an engineer, and now I'm doing translation in this global company? That seems kind of odd. And around the same time, Web 2.0 started to become sort of a popular term, and there were a lot of interesting services that were launching. And so one of them, so the timeline that sort of overlapped with when I was at Sony kind of looks like this. So we had Facebook and GREE launching and Google IPOing. The following year, Odesk and Mechanical Turk launch, and then Twitter launches and Mixi IPOs. And so there's a lot of interesting activity happening online, and I'm working in this hardware company with a software background, and so I'm thinking, I'd like to start try some of my own projects. So I left, and the first project, I was basically working on some web development, and the first project I launched was sort of a clone of Hot or Not, which I tried to bring to Japan. And we called it Kirakirajin. And it didn't do so well, but then I just iterated and moved on to another project. And around that time, the next project was the Nintendo Wii had come out, and so we built a site called Mi Station where you could make you could upload a photo of yourself and pay $10, and we'd make a copy of we'd make an avatar for you and then and send it to your Wii. And this actually ended up getting a bit of publicity. We were featured in the Wall Street Journal, also awarded a Time.com Best 50 website back in 2007, and so it brought quite a bit of visibility, but it was not very scalable because we had to sit in front of the TV and sort of look at a photo of a face and make the avatar. So I started to network a bit with the entrepreneurial community in Tokyo, and the English-speaking one is kind of small. I see a couple familiar faces here. And I met my now co-founder, and we started to work on a couple projects and noticed that one of them, the topics that came up was around translation. And my co-founder's from, he's half British, half Australian, and his wife is Japanese. And so he kept asking her to translate stuff as he got acclimated to Japan. And I remembered the feeling or impression that I had when I was at Sony being asked to do translation. And so we thought, well, this is an interesting problem that we're experiencing from different angles, and maybe there's a way we can solve it by harnessing the internet. So that was sort of the genesis of Gengo. As we were working on these projects, I remembered meeting a guy named Dave McClure soon after I had left Sony, and found that he was starting a fund and getting into angel investing. And so I just sort of sent him the link and reestablished that connection, and found out that he was coming to Japan on vacation because his wife is Japanese. So he's bringing his family. And we ended up setting up a meeting. We did the pitch, and pretty much on the spot, he became our first outside investor. So that was one of the earlier photos. And Dave was really instrumental in introducing and getting us connected with the angel investor network in the Bay Area, and in particular, one that was very international. I think in our seed round, we had 7 angel investors, all from different countries. South America, from Singapore, and from Europe as well. And so, and what was interesting was that each of these angels could really empathize and understand the problem that we were trying to solve. And so that they also became sort of a support network for us. And I think one of the key themes that you're going to sort of notice throughout this presentation is that the value of diversity and how important it is in the decisions that we make and the environment that we have. And for us, I mean, if you think about it, if you want to go global, you kind of have to be global. And if you're going to be global, you have to really value diversity and see it as an asset. And so, and this is diversity in your environment, diversity in your team, your support network, and the activities that you do. Because it's tough enough succeeding in a local environment. And so to succeed globally, being global itself has to be a real strength. And so how were we able to do this at Gengo? And I want to start with sort of the why that's been driving us. And for us, there's sort of 2 reasons. One is a personal and one is a professional reason, I guess you would call it. Personal reason, so right before actually launching it, I was very close to going back to the Bay Area. I was kind of thinking like, okay, some of my ideas here aren't really working out, and there's a lot of activity happening in the Bay Area, so maybe I'll just go back there. But I really love living in Tokyo. As many of you know, it's clean, it's safe. We've got some of the best food in the world. I think we recently awarded the most number of Michelin stars, right, in Japan. So it's a very convenient place to live. And so I was wondering, like, is there a way to bring a piece of Silicon Valley to Tokyo? And on the professional level, there was a lot of growing activity happening online outside of the Bay Area. And we wanted to sort of capture that. And we were kind of wondering, I mean, we noticed that there were more and more sort of copycat services in Japan that were basically maybe 6 to 8 months after something was announced in the Bay Area. And that time lag was shrinking, and services that were new in the valley would pop up sooner here, but they were still copycats. And we believed that as a start that there must be ideas out there that could originate from Japan that could then be successful in the US. And I firmly believe that, I mean, basically for Gengo, if we hadn't been living in Japan, we probably wouldn't have had this idea of solving the translation problem. Because obviously English is just the business language in the US. And so some of the 2 of the core drivers for us in launching Gengo, one, to show that aspects of Silicon Valley could be replicated, and the other being that there were ideas that could be original, because at the time there were a lot of people saying, Japan can't produce original ideas, original startup ideas for the internet. So how are we executing on these drivers? I thought I'd share some of the steps. Some of them are sort of organic, others are a bit deliberate, but I want to share some of the approaches that we've taken that have helped us in growing Gengo to be global. One is that we found a cheerleader. I mentioned it earlier, Dave has been really supportive, helping us hustle, introducing us, and a great PR channel for us. And I think this is key in growing your startup, is really try and get a supporter, a mentor who can be a good cheerleader for you. Another is we identified a competitive advantage to our local environment. So I think many of you who are trying to build teams have struggled with hiring, whether it be engineering talent or whatever. And so for us, we noticed that hiring engineers is really important for our platform. And if you're in the Bay Area, you need to be sort of using cutting edge sort of progressive technologies if you want to attract good talent. And we noticed in Japan that there were a lot of good engineers out there who had an interest in using newer technologies, but their employment environment didn't really support it. And so they would go to hackathons and just dabble in new technologies, but not be able to use it in a production environment. And so if you're a developer, maybe you've heard of source control management tools like Git and GitHub, which now if you're doing a startup in the Bay Area, if you're not using, you're probably not going to be seriously considered. Whereas in Japan, there's still a lot of areas that I guess maybe don't even have source control management, let alone maybe using something like CVS or SVN, which are pretty older tools. So that became part of our pitch, that if you're a developer who's interested in some of the newer technologies like Golang even, which is one of the newer programming languages, we actually deploy in a production environment software that is written in Go, and that has helped us attract some pretty strong talent locally. Another one is learning to be operationally flexible and creative. So we struggled initially to hire locally because in Japan, a lot of employees sort of expect this seishain style contract, which is the full-time contract that I was under at Sony. And it kind of implies that you're always lifetime employment. And when you're doing a startup, you kind of need the flexibility in changing your team sizes. And so we started hiring only on a contract basis. But of course, all other benefits being equal, these contracts are sort of on one-year terms. And initially, it was kind of a challenge to get some of the good talent that was used to this low-risk environment to join. And so we accepted that we would have to put a premium on that. And what that ended up doing is this helped us find the type of individuals who could understand that trade-off between the premium and the risk, the employment sort of contract risk. And so we actually ended up, that was more sort of just trying to be flexible on the types of relationships that you have in your employment. And then on the creative side, we actually have a presentation for spouses. So what we realized was that a lot of the decision making in whether to join a company ended up being obviously with the other family members. And so we have a special presentation that explains the vision of the company and the direction of what we want to do, that we present to the spouses who are kind of concerned about sort of what seems like this no-name company they've never heard of and a high-risk environment. Another one is, well, despite, of course you have to be creative and flexible, but there are some things you kind of just need to do the local way. And so it still kind of surprises me sometimes when I hear company and team builders mention that they're having challenges hiring good local talent. And I find out that the job postings they do are only in English. And for us, like, as long as a position does not require native English, we'll put it in Japanese and post it on services that attract basically a Japanese audience. And of course, this will apply to whatever country you're in, where there are a lot of individuals out there who are strong talent, but they may not realize that an environment, a unique environment like yours that wants to go global even exists. And so you kind of need to get out and be in front of them. We, of course, also choose familiar and internationally available tools. This is kind of getting a little bit tactical, but for example, on payments, we use PayPal. For infrastructure, we'd use AWS. For digital rights document signing, we use a service called Right Signature. And there may be sort of better local services, but if you want to be global, you kind of have to get into the habit of using global services. And realizing that, one of the things we realized was that there may be times where we would have to shift a responsibility from one office to another, or from one individual to another who has a different cultural background. And so familiarity with the global service, or these familiar international services and tools can really help smooth things out. And so this one's kind of tough because sometimes there are local services or startups that you want to support and encourage, and they may not have been localized yet. And so it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. And finally, we do a lot of travel. And of course, make no mistake, you can't replace in-person, face-to-face time. And so we have set up an office in San Mateo because we have customers and investors out in the Bay Area. And on any given week, there's someone from the Tokyo office who's in the San Mateo office. So we really value that FaceTime. And if we can't do it physically, we spend a lot of time on Skype video and other video services within Teams and in conversations with customers around the world. For us, our mornings in the Tokyo office are really quite busy, using all the teams in Tokyo communicating with the teams in San Mateo on Skype. And we even have a wormhole, which is sort of a perpetually on video system between the two offices to sort of give a sense of a single unified office. So what has this resulted in? I thought I'd share just a little bit about what some of the stats that we have now. We have over 13,000 translators now around the world, and they help translate 37 languages, pretty much covering every time zone. We've done over 280 million words of translation, thanks to customers that we've had in over 80 different countries. And our team itself, less than 50 people, but over 10 nationalities. And this is a photo that was taken earlier this year at a conference that we do. We call it Gang Conference. It's kind of an internal conference. And as I was working on this presentation, I noticed that I was sort of following this pattern that I had seen earlier this year by a guy named Simon Sinek called The Golden Circle. Maybe some of you have seen this. And it's a really interesting, good presentation. It's a TED Talk. I recommend checking out if you get a chance. Just search for Start With Why. And it really kind of helps understand and figure out sort of your purpose and find out how that's going to drive what it is that you want to accomplish. So just wanted to share sort of two final thoughts, mostly for the entrepreneurs here today. The first one, so there's no one right way to build a company, obviously, right? You've got Facebook, you've got Microsoft, you've got Google, you've got Apple, and you've got a whole bunch of great tech companies, and they're all high impact and doing things in a very unique way. What they do have is they have a core understanding of what their culture is, and that's going to be really important as you build your teams. And hopefully, if you want to go global, you start to identify what it is about diversity for you that is an asset that is valuable. And the other thing I wanted to share was whenever I'm sort of having a tough time in any aspect of growing the company, I just remember that if it was easy, everyone else would be doing it. So, thank you.